Hello everyone, this is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there. Hello everyone, this is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there.
My name is Richard Furr, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired.
Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome everyone. I'm Michael Gibbs and I'm here with my team Alonzo Coleman and Christopher Johnson, and we're here to help you build your cloud computing career. Maybe you desire to become a cloud architect, maybe your goal is to become a cloud engineer, maybe you want to be a solutions architect or an enterprise architect. All I care is that we can help you build the career of your dreams. You know, I've been an architect now for 25 years, and it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've got to tell you, almost every day I get someone hired as a cloud architect, and I absolutely love it. And the reason we're here is to give you a guide, to be your cloud architect roadmap or your cloud engineer roadmap, so you know the actual way to get there. See, when I started my tech career 25 years ago, I called a computer training school. I spent $5,000 for a ridiculous certification boot camp, and then an $11,000 certification boot camp, and another $10,000 for a certification boot camp. In the end, I was completely unemployable. Nobody cared, because I may have had certifications, but I didn't have the right skills. And in those days, I called 50 recruiters that were good ones, spoke to them each for an hour, made a master list of things that people were looking for in a network engineer, and poof, I got my first job as a senior network engineer. Since then, I've been guiding people for over 2 decades. I've taken people that have never worked in tech before, like Jermaine, who just got an enterprise architect job, through our program, because he knew exactly what to study. We taught him and we coached him, and we can do it for you, and I want to get you there. See, the key is you have to know what the job is, what we do in the job, and you have to speak to hiring managers to really know what they want. We've spoken to thousands of hiring managers, incredible numbers of CEOs and CIOs and CTOs on what they want on their team. We speak to VPs of HR constantly, recruiters and hiring managers, and they tell us every single day. So I want to guide you to get your best cloud career. If you want to know how to get a cloud architect job, ask us, we'll tell you. If you want to know what to learn to be a cloud architect, ask us, we'll tell you. I promise you, none of it's covered in your certifications, none of it. Now, there are valuable things in certification, but it will never get you hired for one of these elite jobs, and we can tell you why if you're curious. So come prepared to ask questions, and that's why we're here. You know, some people say the best way to learn is to make mistakes. I'm going to tell you that's the worst way. Imagine a doctor who just learned by making mistakes. Person 1 died, person 2 died, person 3 died. After 1,000 people died, oh, I know how to deal with a heart attack now. No. They go to medical school. They spend a lot of time, and guess what? People get cured, not dead. It's the same thing. I've taken people that have tried to work in tech for 3 years, had a single phone conversation with them, and a month later, they've gotten their first $200,000 job, because it's all about guidance, and that's why we're here. So please ask us your questions. I want you all to have a wonderful career. I want you to all have that cloud architect roadmap or cloud engineer roadmap and know exactly what you need so you can get your best career and live your best life. You know, every weekend when I'm in Palm Beach, you know, enjoying the beach, and people are saying, Mike, how'd you get there? I tell them, early in my career, 25 years ago, I found a coach. And I didn't just ask anybody. I found the most successful person I could find in tech and said, how do I get to the goal? They told me, and guess what? 6 months later, I was a lead architect. A couple months after that, I was working on Wall Street designing systems for bank, and it's all been history. So I'm going to have Chris talk to you about a few things we have coming up and start compiling your questions. Please ask some questions, because that's how we can help you. So ask us whatever questions you want so we can help you build the perfect question. Pop them in the chat box, and my team will pop them up one by one, and we'll ask them for you. But before we get to the questions, Chris, do you have anything to say, or Alonzo after Chris?
Yeah, definitely. So Mike mentioned some like a cloud architect roadmap and stuff like that. So just so everybody knows, we've got a cloud architect career guide for you. So you can get your free cloud architect career guide. This is specifically geared towards those that want to get their first cloud architect job, but also anyone that wants to get a cloud architect job. Maybe you're working in a role that's got the title of cloud architect, but it's not actually the cloud architect. So if you're looking to figure out exactly how to become a cloud architect, get that free guide. The link is in the description and in the chat box. We also have I just changed that. We also have a how to get your first cloud job webinar that we do on Thursday. It'll be this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Goes right along with that how to get your first cloud architect job guide. So you can do both of those, get your guide, and then join us for the webinar this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And that is completely free to you as well. And then, of course, make sure you're following Mike and Go Cloud Careers on LinkedIn. That's where we're keeping most of our up-to-date things. Pretty much everything that we come out with is going to be on LinkedIn first. So make sure you're following on LinkedIn, both Go Cloud Careers and Mike, so that you don't miss anything. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find out more about our training programs. So Tyrone will be putting a link in the box there to our training portal so that you can see all the programs that we've got available to help you in your career. So I will hand it over to Alonzo if Alonzo's got anything to share before we get to some of these questions. And make sure to post your questions in the chat box. I don't see any questions yet. If there's no questions, we can't help you. So give us some questions.
Absolutely.
It'll be a very boring Q&A session.
Yeah, well, we definitely want to get them there, Chris. We want to make sure that you all have your first step towards becoming a cloud architect, or rather understanding what a cloud architect does, responsibilities, and how you get there starts with your first question. So we're here. We're really excited to be here. We don't have a lot of these opportunities because we're always innovating. We're always meeting. We're coming together, trying to give you the best and the next level, next features of these development programs. So we are here to help, and we're looking forward to it.
Chris, you're talking to a mute button.
I love talking to a mute button. It's the best thing in the world. I can't annoy anybody by doing that. But while we're waiting on some of these questions to come in, do you want to talk about about our Head in the Cloud show tomorrow, Mike?
Yes, absolutely. I want you to join us tomorrow night for the Head in the Cloud show. And we'll talk about artificial intelligence and what it means for your career and how to stay hired. You know, we're starting to see the first artificial intelligence layoffs. IBM canceled 7,200 positions because of artificial intelligence that were not customer facing. Now, if you paid attention to our channel about a year ago, we started telling you about moving into customer facing roles. We were featured in Forbes talking about how to stay hired in tech and the world of AI by moving into customer facing roles, and many other tech publications. We've been asking people for about a year. IBM canceled 7,200 roles, and now they just announced 8,000 people that are not in customer-facing roles that are going to be laid off. That's 15,000 jobs that were either lost or canceled from IBM, and this is just the beginning. We're still in beta phases from AI, but there are some skills that can't be replaced. You can't replace a cloud architect with AI. You can't replace a solution architect with AI. You can't replace an enterprise architect with AI. You can't replace a sales engineer with AI, or a program manager with AI, or an account executive. You can't replace these things. You can replace a software developer easily. You can replace a cloud admin pretty easily, a Linux sysadmin pretty easily. So it's all about having the right skills that are not replaceable. You know, I've been in tech now for 20 some years. I was at one company that did 13 layoffs. The people that I coached didn't get laid off. The people that I didn't coach, that were focusing on the wrong things, were laid off. I've actually survived over 25 layoffs in my career and never been laid off, because I always look to have the skills that were almost layoff proof. And that's why we're here, because I truly, truly, truly want to help you build an elite technology career, whether it's as a cloud architect or anywhere in between. So please ask us your questions. And then from there, we'll tell you where to go. I see there's a first question. I'll answer that, and hopefully more will come in, because I want to help you.
All right. So it looks like our first question is from LGG. How can a cloud architect advance their career? What are practical steps to take? The tech-focused activities of a Microsoft architect I observed leave me unsure about the right path.
LGG, are you working as a cloud architect yet? Because there's the steps to get hired, and there's the steps to actually advance your career. And I'd like to know that first. So while we wait for you to answer that, because I'm going to answer this, but it's different if it's your first tech job, and it's different if you're a working architect. You know what? I'll give you the answer to both. If you're beginning your career, LGG, as an architect, I want to kind of make it clear to you what the whole point of an architect is. And if you truly understand the point of the architect, You'll understand why we have what I call super high value skills, medium value skills, and low value skills. If our job as a cloud architect LGG is to transform a business, you have to understand that if you don't understand business, you will not be a good cloud architect, and you'll be pigeonholed at the bottom. You know, I can show you some positions right now, and I will. I usually have a couple that are next to me. And I'll show you the difference between generic architect jobs and other big business jobs. And I'm going to show this to you to prove a point. And then after that, I'll get into the nitty-gritty of some of these things. There are people that try to get ahead by focusing on certifications. That is the worst thing you can do, because here's the reason. Certifications are intro-level, junior-level skills. They are a name of a service and how to configure that. Now, as an architect, we don't configure any services, and we sure can't use the names of the services they come up with. Now, I can talk about object storage, but I can't with my customer, but I can't talk about blob. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. We have to understand the following, but the best way to get ahead is to develop your business acumen. Here's why. Global Knowledge, who sells certification, found that a certification up to a point can raise someone's salary $13,000 a year. If you go to salary.com and you look up the average salary with someone with strong business acumen skills, you'll see it's almost $560,000. It's like $557,000 as of last week. Now, this is exactly in line with the people I've coached over the years. Here you've got a senior director, for example, at Palo Alto, earning $540 on average, with a range of $425 to $709. Here you've got a principal architect, and here's the difference between a principal architect and a generic architect. That principal architect is really someone that's heavy duty on the business side. They're experts at helping their customers transform their business. And here you go, an average salary, 508. By the way, I was a principal architect in less than 2 years, because when everybody else was focused on tech, I was focused on business. And that's how I reached it. And you can see this job pays between $394 and $677. Microsoft is a phenomenal company. Here's another principal architect role that pays on average $379 with a range of $300 to $495. And here's another job which requires a lot of business acumen, a senior director at Cisco, lots of leadership, lots of management. Note the average salary is $527. So the first thing that you can understand is if your job is to improve your customer's business performance, the key to getting ahead is becoming an expert on improving your customer's business performance. Now, I keep talking about business. Now, in every job, there's a tech. There's a tool that we have. A firefighter has hoses and tools. A soldier has their weapons. Our tools are the technology that we're going to design. So we're dealing with networking and data center technologies when we talk about cloud. Because the reality is, if I talk about the network file system that Sun invented 20 years ago, Sun Microsystems, guess what? It's the same EFS that Amazon's trying to sell, or Microsoft's got their version and Google's got their version. It's the same thing. If I talk about a virtual machine, in 1999, VMware invented the virtual machine. Actually, virtualization was invented in the 1970s by IBM, but that's another story. An EC2 instance on AWS, an Azure virtual machine, an Oracle virtual machine, a Google Compute Engine instance, same thing. So our tools are the technologies that we leverage as part of our design, but our goal is to improve the customer's business performance. So increase your business acumen skills. We teach them extensively. Why? Because they can bump up your salary an extra several $100,000 per year. And guess what? Those skills can't be replaced by AI. How about your leadership skills? Again, strong data to show leadership and higher pay. And guess what? When you do your leadership skills, I'm going to tell you why. So LGG, which do you think is a more effective architect? A real techie that has 50 certifications and 15 years of experience, or someone that understands the tech and has 1 year experience, but can lead a team of 50 people that each have 15 years experience, even if they don't understand the tech? 50 people versus one person. Wow. Now I want you to see, with 50 people, it's really, really there. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Your leadership skills need to be there. Now, the next thing that you need to understand is you have to be what's called CXO relevant. After my MBA, Cisco, when I was an enterprise architect, forced me to take about a half a dozen CXO relevancy courses to the tune of about $20,000. And it made me a better architect, because as architects, we've got to convince the executives why they need our technology. The techie engineers don't make buying decisions. They don't have purchasing abilities. So your CXO relevancy, what do you say to the CEO, CFO, CIO, CTO? Next are your presentation skills. Whether you're trying to get a job, you'll have to present for the solution architect or cloud architect role to a board of people. Or in this job, we're going to be presenting every single day, presenting to internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. Now, next is going to be stakeholder management. If I'm going to design a solution, typically speaking, it's going to be multi-cloud, because everybody's multi-cloud, 98% of people are multi-cloud. But in addition to being multi-cloud, it's going to be multi-vendor. Like, look, there's no way that we're going to, in a serious security environment, use something like an AWS WAF. Why? It doesn't adapt to changing conditions. So with AWS WAF, after you've been hacked, you'll get notified you've been hacked. But if I deal with a Palo Alto or a Fortinet or a checkpoint firewall, as soon as a hacking event occurs, the firewalls will adapt and stop it under normal circumstances. So I'm going to have to be, when I say stakeholder management, I'm going to be managing my customer. I'm going to be managing vendors. I'm going to be managing internal resources that are going to help me lead the design. Next are your rating and communication skills. If you're not a stellar communicator and you don't have executive level communication skills, not only will you not get the right information because the customer will never give it to you, but you'll make errors when you're communicating things and there'll be outages and things that occur. So you need good communication skills, verbally, but also written, because you're going to be writing for the CXO leader, like the CEO or the CFO or the CTO or the CIO that's going to buy your stuff. You're going to be writing for the management people, but you're also going to be writing for the techies. So you got to learn how to write and basically translate between business speak and techie speak. Now, those are the business skills. They're really, really the critical skills that you need to move up. But I'm going to cover the tech skills anyway, just to be sure. Now, we don't touch the technology as architects. This is not a hands-on position. So coding, things like Python, are not useful to us. Knowing how to configure or administer Linux is not useful to us. Knowing how to write a Terraform script is not useful to us. Knowing sysops or maintenance is not useful for us. It's somebody else's job. Knowing DevOps is also not useful to us. But what is? Architectural design, which is, how do I take these security components, these firewalls, these identity and access management systems, these intrusion detection systems, these cloud native things? How do I architect that together for security? How do I choose the right applications, unified communications, CRM systems, for example, supply chain applications, ERP applications, and integrate them together in a cohesive strategy that's going to improve the business performance? And all that network and data center technology. Now, the funny thing is they have all these certifications that are out there, and they teach you the name of a service and how to configure it, but they don't actually teach you what the technology even is. Imagine trying to bake a chicken souvlaki. If you don't know what chicken is, you don't know what olive oil is, you don't know what garlic is, you don't know what oregano is, and lemon juice. Sorry, my strength is cooking Greek food because I'm Greek, but that's neither here nor there. So you need to know that. So what are these tech skills? Well, there's servers and server virtualization and container orchestration and block storage, object storage, file storage, meaning storage area networks. Load balancers of all various kinds, reverse proxies of all various kinds. They are databases, whether they be a graph database or a traditional NoSQL database or a relational database, not the cloud native stuff, whether they be next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, VPN concentrators. What are these technologies? How do they work? What business benefits do they bring? And how do you tie the cohesive strategies, things together for a cohesive strategy? LGG, that's how you get ahead. And the last piece of advice I'll give you, don't get 10x AWS certified. It will destroy your career because it's all about your brand. So if you can look like an architect, walk like an architect, and talk like an architect, people are going to take you seriously. Imagine a doctor that when you went into their office that said, doctor, dog walker, sales rep, vitamin sales rep, personal trainer, and maid. Would you take them seriously? Of course you wouldn't. Well, that's what happens when people get certifications in 10 different people's careers. They look like the dog walker, the maid, the firefighter. Oh, you really? There's a cloud architect in there? I wouldn't know. So those are the ways to stand out. So master your craft. Dedicate every day you can a little bit to get better at it, mostly the business side, but also the tech side, and you'll have a wonderful career, LGJ. And I'd love to answer more questions if you're curious.
All right. So our next question is from Samuel. How can a project manager become a solution architect?
Easy. I used to be a program and a project manager. So there are some key things about, especially when you're dealing with different folks from the department, you have to find out, you have to build rapport. You have to understand who the department heads are, PMOs, and so forth. It's the same equivalent factor when you're becoming a cloud architect. You're speaking to key representatives, trying to understand what the business transformative requirements are, how you're going to be able to create these opportunities and build relationships. You're going to be able to do that, Samuel, because you already know how to speak to people. You already know how to deal with people, help them to understand why these requirements are the way they are, or what the valuation of them are, and how you're going to be able to use those for business transformative opportunities. You can do this, Samuel, because I've done it, because you're going to be able to use these things. And if you're a part of the program, you're going to be able to apply that program and project manager skill set as a foundation, and you're going to be able to use that, use the development program to propel you forward into becoming a cloud or a solutions architect. So you already have a lot of those soft skills and those competencies needed to become a cloud architect. You just need to take it further with the development program, and you can be a cloud architect easy.
Okay, so how did you become a working cloud architect? What steps did you take that worked for you to get hired before we brought you back?
Well, I'll tell you this, Mike, what I did before, when I converted over, and a lot of people, they don't know that I used to be a student. So I am living proof that this works. I am living proof that I love to help people, and that this is monumental. It's almost, it's needed. It's required for people to be here to become a cloud architect, as opposed to what we see out there. So to your point, Mike, what I did was that I went through the program. I was able to apply what I used into becoming a cloud architect, because I was able to do a comparative list. And there's a lot of things that unfortunately, I won't be able to share a lot of those details unless you are a part of the department. But it's through the Cloud Architect Career Development Program that I was able to make this possible. So apply what you have, use it towards and inside of the development program. Follow the program that we set out before you, and you will be able to transform yourself into becoming a solutions and cloud architect.
I think you did a phenomenal answer to that. On Samuel, I've taken a lot of program managers and project managers and converted them. It's really twofold. Project management is more task-oriented, and there's some soft skills. We need to raise this to more the executive level, a little more business acumen, a little more leadership, a little more finesse. And so you're going to need that, whether you get it from us or whether you go to some training for that. I mean, I didn't have access to us, for example, and I took about $100,000 of training after my MBA just for those executive pieces. So make sure that you get your presentation skills training, your leadership skills training, and your executive communication and executive presence training. After that, make sure that somebody teaches you these network and data center concepts like BGP, like how to design an IP addressing plan, for example, how to choose the right wide area networking technologies, such as IPsec VPNs versus an SSL VPN versus a private line versus Ethernet over MPLS versus an software-defined networking WAN versus, say, a SASE. Make sure somebody's teaching you about switching, like VLAN, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, link aggregation groups, for example. Make sure somebody is teaching you DNS, DHCP, RProxy app. Now, of course, we teach all these things, but I'm just giving you how to do it if you're not with us. Make sure someone teaches you about servers and server virtualization and containers and about container orchestration, all about how to optimize storage area and networks, all about, for example, load balancers and architecting with your load balancers and how to do complex things that aren't really taught in the certifications, how to secure an enterprise and all those security things that are there in business applications. And of course, now that you learn about all those things, how to design it. Now, we've got a cloud architect career development program which gets everybody hired. And I promise you, it'll cost you about $100,000 less to take our course than it would to try to learn these on your own. But I just want you to know what to do. But we get people hired every single day in our cloud architect career development program. And that's my recommendation. And even on Thursday, we'll have a webinar teaching you everything you need to know. So whether you're with us or not, you're there, but I really prefer you get with us because we get people hired every day. Last week, we got 3 people hired. While others are getting laid off because of AR, our students are still getting hired, and employers come to us and they say, when do you have people ready to graduate? Because they love our students because we're so good at what we do. Go to the next one, Chris. You're muted again, Chris.
I'm waiting for a clarification from you on the next one.
Okay.
Can you clarify on the next one for me? Look in the chat box, please.
What do you mean clarifying the next one? I said we can go to the next question. Is it?
All right. So our next question, I'll answer this one first if Mike will sit back and let me answer this one. Sure. All right. That's the clarification I'm waiting on. Can I answer this one first, Mike?
Of course.
All right. Yay. So John says architects are not supposed to touch the tech. What does it mean when the hiring managers say they want a hands-on enterprise/cloud architect and not just someone who tells people what to do? They wanted me to both design and help to deploy and work with engineers to deploy my solutions. So I'm going to answer this first from a hiring manager's perspective, just in general, any hiring manager in any industry. And then I'll let Mike talk to the specifics. So no matter what the role is, it could be the CEO, it could be the COO, it could be the enterprise architect, it could be the sales engineer, it could be the front desk agent at a hotel. The person that's hiring for that position is going to say they're going to want somebody that's hands-on. And what that means is they want somebody that's not afraid to step in and do something if it's necessary to be done. Now, if this was asked during the course of an interview, that's an opportunity for you to ask for some clarification. Like, what does hands-on look like for you? So it looks like you asked for some clarification, and they elaborated, help to deploy and work with engineers to deploy my solutions. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I am not a cloud architect, cloud engineer, or any of the above. I am a business guy. I am the chief operating officer. I do business. So from my outside perspective, this falls right in line with that perception of I want somebody that's going to step in if they need to step in and get something done. AKA, I need somebody hands-on, not somebody that's going to sit there and point and say and do and you go do this, you go do that. No, they want somebody that will be part of a team to solve a solution or solve a problem. I'm going to venture out here and say helping to deploy and work with engineers to deploy my solutions. They probably want you to be there for their guidance, answer any questions they may have about the design that you created. Possibly. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they don't want you in there doing the engineer's job because obviously they say work with engineers. So they don't want you doing the engineer's job. They want you to be able to work with the engineer and not just say, hey, engineer, go do this. That's my interpretation from my experience as someone that's hired for different positions in different industries. That's my interpretation of someone when they say, I want someone that's hands-on. Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Here's the reality, John. It's not an architect job. I'm going to say it again. It's an engineering job.
Mhm.
Just today, someone sent me some stupid job description where it had CI/CD in it and it had a little Python in it. And I said, what's the job pay? And they said $85,000 a year. I said, because it's not an architect job. Here's the thing, John. If you work for AWS, Azure, Google, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, Capgemini, and you touch your customer's network, you will be fired and escorted out by security within about 10 minutes. You are not allowed to touch your customer's systems. And here's the reason why. You can't focus on the big picture and be hands-on at the same time. That's why the CEO is not writing code in a technology company. But there are a lot of non-architect jobs. Now, all of us want people to have experience. I would prefer everybody had 10 years experience too, even for a help desk job. And here's why. We know that if you did certifications, you've been taught everything that's wrong and exactly what not to do. So we want you to have the judgment and the wisdom. But here's the thing. That's not an architect job. And we've got architects in Apple, Microsoft, Cisco, IBM, Palo Alto Systems, Deloitte, Accenture, Capgemini, JP Morgan Chase, Barclays Bank, AWS, Azure, Google, you name it. None of them are allowed to touch their customers' technology. If somebody asks you to touch the technology, run. Here's how it works, John. You got an architect that works with an account executive, typically an account manager, potentially a sales engineer, and we design it. As soon as we negotiate the contract and it's done, another team comes in and builds it. And we are gone and we are off to the next customer trying to sell our new solution to the next customer. Now, if it's a little customer, they'll have a project manager and a team of post-sales engineers to build it. If it's a real architecture, the kind I work on, you'll have a service delivery executive that'll be director level or senior director level or even VP level. Manage a team of 2 to 5 program managers who will then manage a team of 10 to 50 engineers to go build the thing. You're not going to be allowed to do it, but there are a tremendous number of jobs masquerading. Now, here's the other thing, John, that causes confusion with the architect career. And I made a YouTube video. We're going to release it very soon. These are the levels of architects that exist out there, as well as their levels of pay. 20 years ago, well, maybe 25 years ago, my first architect job was something called the design engineer. And what we were people that used to be hands-on. And then they asked us to design stuff because we were the only people that knew how to put the parts together without it breaking. Now, John, that turned into the technical architect. And here's what the technical architect was. An engineer that did design, but they wanted to pay him 30% more, so they called him a technical architect. Again, this is a techie. You'd see him running around the office wearing tie-dyed shirts and Coke bottle thick glasses. And these people were really, really smart about the tech. But if you stuck them in front of the customer would escort them out of the room because they'd speak tech, not business. Now, in those days, John, when we had our technical architects, and they still exist right now, but they're a $100,000 job versus a $500,000 job for a principal enterprise architect or cloud architect. And they're always going to be paid very little because they focus on the tech. If you focus on the tech, you're going to be at the bottom of the barrel. Why? There's millions of people all over the world that know the tech. It's easy to find. Heck, you can use ChatGPT for tech, but they're not doing system design or sales. So in those days, businesses started to say, wait, this tech is a competitive advantage. It's not just something we can buy and figure out how to make work. We can improve sales with it. We can improve our customer experience with it. We can create a competitive advantage over our competition, and that bred a new kind of architect called the solution architect. And the solution architect role I first had around 2003. And what was a solution architect? It's someone that works for Cisco that recommends solutions in the Cisco platform. That's all well and good when you're Cisco. But here's the reality. Cisco doesn't make everything. So the solution architect would focus on the Cisco stuff, or the IBM stuff, or the AWS stuff, or the Azure stuff, or the Google stuff. Now, the reality is in today's world, nobody would be crazy enough to use a single cloud. That's not true. 2% of customers use a single cloud. 98% of customers use multiple clouds. And in the multiple cloud world, what we're actually talking about is the cloud architect focuses on tying the AWS stuff, the Azure stuff, the Google stuff, the Nutanix stuff, the OpenStack stuff, the Oracle stuff all together in a cohesive solution. And they can't touch the technology because you're going to be spending your entire day doing vendor management, leadership, presentations, and sales. And if you touch the tech, you'd forget it. You'd be fired in a second. And the reason you're going to be fired is you can't see the details when you're focusing on big picture. Go out tonight, John. Go look at the sky. Now take a telescope and zoom in the moon. You know what you're not going to see? The sky. For the engineer to deploy, they've got to be there. So there's that. And then in a minute, Chris has some ideas that he wants to add, and I'd love him to do that. So there's that. Now the enterprise architect is one that's even more business oriented. There are in some cases 100% business, in some cases 80% business, 20% tech. But kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So, Chris, why don't you interject a little bit?
John, I just took the opportunity to take a look at your LinkedIn profile, and your LinkedIn profile, if it represents what your resume looks like, then that's the reason why they said what they said. Your LinkedIn profile says your experience as a senior cybersecurity engineer / architect at 2 different companies since 2007. So that right there is probably the number one factor that they said what they said on the interview, because that you are putting out there into the world that's what you want, that's what you do, that you are a hands-on architect, because you have engineer and architect as a same position. That right there is, I would bet something. I don't know what I would bet, but I would bet something. I'm not a betting man, but I would bet something that is why that question came up, and that probably tinted and made your interview go whatever direction your interview went because of that. Now, I also know that you enrolled in our program recently. Don't rush this. Please don't rush this.
Yes, John. We had this discussion too. So I'm so glad that my friends and peers are echoing the exact same thing that I was saying, is that we had our discussion, and I understand your strong desire to move forward as quickly as possible. But given the fact of what you shared with me, I think it's so important that you just focus on the program, go through the steps. The program works if you do. Don't cut corners. Don't leapfrog into other areas where you feel, or past where you feel you already have the information. Go through it. Take the time to invest in this. You got this. And I know coming out the other end of this, you will achieve the dreams that you're looking for. I really believe that.
Yes. And lastly, you're going to have to fix that LinkedIn profile when you're ready to be hired. If you have cloud architect / cloud engineer next to it, that means you're an engineer and has nothing to do with an architect. I want you to realize when I see that on my resume where somebody puts architect / engineer, I toss the resume in the trash instantly, because I figure if the person doesn't even know what they are and they don't know the difference between these roles, they don't have the skills for me to hire them. Would somebody put doctor / nurse on their resume, or airplane pilot / flight attendant, when the rest of the world knows these are discrete roles? And if you do that, you're going to be reduced to the lowest common denominator, which is engineering.
Yeah. Now the reality. Now, if you are in a reality where for some reason your company is making you do both, use the highest denominator.
Yes.
Not the lowest. Don't put engineer / architect. Put architect. If you're in a reality where you're being forced to do both, just go with one. Go with the one, and the one that is most reflective of what you desire to be. Because I understand some smaller organizations, and maybe in some developing parts of the world, they combine and try and get people to do everything under the sun. I get it. Trust me, I've worked for companies that do the same thing. It happens, but you have full control over how you present yourself.
Exactly.
So don't put engineer / architect. Just put architect. Or if it didn't have any architect, be honest and just say engineer. Just be straightforward. I mean, but if you are in a role where they're trying to do both, just put architect. Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple, but it has to be real. If you put engineer and architect, we know it's not a real job. And we had somebody, his name was Arun. He was one of many. Arun was a technical genius. And what ultimately happened was he got some stupid DevOps certification and SysOps certification and cloud developer because someone said, if you want to be an architect, learn everybody else's jobs. And he had all this tech stuff on his resume. And if you wanted to be a DevOps engineer, it wouldn't be garbage. But when you want to be an architect, certifications in somebody's job make you look bad. And he went on interview after interview after interview, and they were all techie like this. And then I said, Arun, can I fix your resume in a class? And we took dedicated a class to this. I took off the DevOps, the developer, the SysOps. I took off all that techie coding stuff. Poof. He had 3 job offers within a month, and they were real architect jobs where they wanted him to work as an architect, and they paid him as an architect too.
All right. So let's see. Here we go. Is it better to be self-employed cloud architect during this tech layoff period? No.
No.
No. Absolutely not. Not unless you have the experience that Mike has. And even at that point, I don't know. But
so
it's always safer to be with a corporation.
Here's the thing. Unless you've got a Rolodex of 50 CEOs, you'll never be able to get any work as a self-employed cloud architect. Because here's the thing, Darius. In every architecture, I need a team of 25 to 50 people. So if you want to be self-employed, make sure you hire at least 25 architects and DevOps engineers to work alongside you, because you're going to need that. And you're also going to need a several $million marketing budget to convince people to use you versus Deloitte or an Accenture. So I'd say your startup cost, unless you've got 20 years experience, is at least $10 million.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The people that are on contract, they're the first to go. But Darius, architects aren't getting laid off. They're getting hired. Engineers are getting laid off. I want to say that again. We had an engineering program and we stopped selling it a year ago. And we stopped selling it for this reason. We knew engineers were going to get laid off between AI and the economy recession. And we focused on architects, and our people are getting hired every day. Now, there is a type of engineer that won't get laid off if they've got special business skills. It's like, we call it the cloud engineer of the future. But no, focus on getting hired by a good employer, do a good job, and you don't have to worry about getting laid off. I'll give you more of a secret. Employers don't lay off their best workers. Here's what's done in tech. And once you move into management, you'll get this or you'll learn this. Every year, we stack rank our employees in tech companies, from the best to the worst. We lay off the bottom 5 to 10% of people unless they're part of a division that gets removed. And if they're part of a division that gets removed, if they're good, we'll move them to a new division. So be great at your job, and you'll never get laid off. There were 25 layoffs that occurred in my career, and I was never laid off. And the people that I coached, for the most part, didn't get laid off either. The people that focused on certification or focused on being a techie, that didn't build their soft skills or communication skills or their leadership skills or their social skills, they're laid off. So just be good at your job and don't worry about getting laid off. As long as you're focusing on a revenue-producing, customer-facing role, like a cloud architect, solution architect, sales engineer, account manager, you're going to be safe in these roles as a role.
Karen asked, does a general cloud architect need to be an expert at a particular specialty domain, or does he just need to have a good overall knowledge of everything?
Karen, general means generalist. It means you can't know too much about anything. Here's what you have to be as a generic cloud architect: a master of leadership, a master of sales, a master of executive presence, a master of communication skills. Because your job is going to be coordinating AWS, Azure, Google, 10 engineers, network architects, security architects, big data architects, and other vendors. That's your job, is managing a group of people. So that's the key. So you can't be an expert in any one of those things, because again, if it's like looking at the sky, if you focus on the moon, you risk the whole sky. So you must stay big picture as a generic architect. Now, a cloud security architect is different. They focus on the security, for example, and their domain expertise is in security, and that's all they do. But generic is just that, generic. Good question, though.
Follow-up question. What is your take on big data architect career path, and what do you think the demand for this position is currently and in the
Good question.
Karen, it's one of the worst paying jobs that are out there with the least demand. In fact, we get a tremendous number of big data architects and we retrain them and get them hired as cloud architects. Good example, we had Praveen come to us a while ago. He's a wonderful big data architect. We retrained him and got him a much better job for JP Morgan Chase as a cloud architect. We've also taken in some data scientists and retrained them as a cloud architect. Now, if you ask me what I thought about a cloud artificial intelligence architect, that might be different. But as far as the data piece, no, I wouldn't be focusing on that if I was you. There's other careers like data scientists who have PhDs in advanced statistics and calculus that make great big data architect people. But if that's not you and you don't have a PhD in advanced mathematics, I suggest you find another career like a cloud architect.
All right, Karen's on a roll with these questions. As a cloud architect, how familiar do you need to be with the various service offerings from the public cloud providers?
Oh, and that's another excellent question. So here's the thing. You must know BGP, for example, because that's how you're going to do your routing or routing, depending upon which country you're in. It's the same BGP on Cisco, Juniper, Palo Alto, Fortinet, AWS, Azure, and Google. You must know, Karen, object storage and its strengths and weaknesses and when to use it. It's irrelevant if it's AWS S3, Google's cloud storage, or Microsoft's blog. You need to know the underlying technique. So I'm kind of ask you this. If you wanted to be a race car driver, how familiar do you have to be with driving? Very. But if I put a really good race car driver in a BMW versus a Mercedes, they'd figure it out in about a day. So it's not about being an expert on AWS. No. It's being an expert on the cloud. I'm a cloud architect. You know what I'm going to do for AWS? I'm going to call AWS architects and get into the nitty gritty. And even if I spent my life, Karen, working on just AWS and mastering AWS, I'm not going to know the inner workings of AWS unless I work for them because they're not going to share that information with the public. When I started my career, I was a Cisco certified internet expert, was designing systems for banks, and I was good, real good. And then out of nowhere, we'd run into a bug on the router and I'd call Cisco. And an army of people would show up. And wow, Karen, these people were like freaky geniuses on the back plane of the box. They were looking at the ASICs. They were looking at the drivers on the software. I didn't even know what that stuff was. Because they know the inner workings and their workings because they can't share, companies can't share their weaknesses with you. So a really good architect, you need to know all the tech and how the tech works. And then you need to be able to consult with the cloud providers themselves because they're going to give you their solution architects to try and sell you their stuff. So it's better for you to bring in a Microsoft and AWS, a Google person, an OpenStack one, and a Nutanix one, get them to play off of each other, ask for your help in the design, and then think if the design that they give you meets the sound architectural principles that you would do. You're coordinating these things with generic architect in a multi-cloud environment. So you're not going to be configuring lifecycle policies on AWS. You're not going to be figuring which AWS thing to use. You're going to be designing the system with the object storage, the block storage, the file storage. And yeah, you need to know enough about these things, but guess what? You can read it on their website any single time you want. That's the nothing part. The real issue is knowing what technology to use. I need a plane. Okay, what kind of plane do I need? I need a car. What kind of car do I need? I need a firewall. Can I get away with the cloud native thing because I have a website for my cat Cindy and that's good enough? Do I need a next generation firewall? Okay, what kind of throughput do I need on the firewall? Now, if I turn the firewall on and I want this level of deep packet inspection, does that take it from 1 gigabit a second to 100 megabit on vendor A, where vendor B can do 5 times that? That's when you start doing bake-offs and proof of concept. And guess what, Karen? We don't touch the tech and the proof of concept either. We bring in a bunch of smart engineers and they do the proof of concepts, and we kind of lead them and buy lunches and dinners and drinks and interact with the customer. So yes, you have to be deep knowledgeable about the tech, but this is not like, individual vendors tech. You can learn that as you need it, but you got to be great at the underlying tech first.
All right. And I think this is This is the last one from her, I think. Let's see here. What is involved in becoming a cloud subject matter expert? And how does it relate to an employer's expectation of a cloud architect?
Good questions.
Karen, it takes at least 10,000 hours in the job, minimum, to become an expert. So when you see someone that's got a certification and they tell you you're an expert, you can laugh at them. And when an employer sees that on their resume, it basically says, don't even waste your time interviewing them. So it takes at least 10,000 hours in a minor area. So I spent more than 10,000 hours with just BGP. And while I was there, I advised the world's largest internet service providers. I was asked to speak at conferences almost every day on BGP. That's how I became a subject matter expert. So first, I studied BGP. And I didn't just read, 10,000 pages on BGP, and I read far more than that, believe me. I designed things and we tested things. I consulted people. And after living the life every single day for 5 years and only doing BGP and literally nothing else, that's how I became a subject matter expert. So you read every day, at least 2 hours a day in your field to become better at it. You work at it 6 to 8 hours a day at just one thing to be better at it. Every day you communicate with the leaders in their field just to be better at it. And that's how you become an expert. Sleep it. So make sure it's something you love. I happen to love BGP.
I'm loving it myself. So it's definitely something that grows on you. And the more you understand it, the more it draws you in overall. It's becoming a really great cloud architect, Karen. From Abdallah, how do you find cloud solution architect training? How to find cloud solution architect training if the cloud industry is not having a chance to work in this industry?
Well, Abdallah, that's why we created our own. Prior to starting our own cloud architect career development program, here's what happened. I'll tell you why I came out of retirement to start this class. I've been training people forever, and for 2 decades, I've helped people build their careers. So when I retired from my main job when I was 34, in my part-time retirement, I was coaching people to get hired. And I've coached plenty of people at $250,000 to $500,000 jobs in my coaching practice because I love it. And I had actually set up a cryptocurrency mining data center in Kansas. And the person that owned the facility that we were renting said to me, my kid's ready to graduate with a computer engineering degree. What should he study? I said, cloud architecture, of course. And he said, okay. And he says, where can I find anything? And I said, here's the thing. I said, I will buy him every course that exists out there because they were on Udemy and one wasn't. It was like $100. It was like no big deal. The guy was a friend. I said, and I'll spend 4 hours with him coaching him every Friday. After 3 days, guess what happened? The kid called me and he said, Mike, I set up an EC2 instance and an S3 bucket, but what is an EC2 instance? What is an S3 bucket? What am I doing? And I said, Nathan, I said, I can't believe this. How could you be going through this, do some of these trainings, and I'm going to meet with you on Friday and not know any of this? What are you, lazy? So I said, Nathan, I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to watch that course. And if you aren't paying attention, I'm not going to coach you. But if you are paying attention, we'll figure it out. Abdullah, I was horrified. I watched these courses. And literally speaking, all of it talked about a name of a service and how to configure it, but they didn't even tell you what it was. Abdullah, I was so horrified that I interviewed 1,000 AWS people that were AWS certified. I'd say 30% of them had the Certified Solution Architect Professional as a certification. Not a single one knew anything about architecture. So I started our own company, and that's why we founded Go Cloud Architects, which became Go Cloud Careers. And Abdullah, now we've got people getting hired in every country in the world. Last week, we had people hired in the US, Canada, South Africa, just last week. We got people getting hired in India, the Middle East, Asia, and everywhere in between. So our Cloud Architect Career Development Program was made by architects to make you an architect. And, we have me as an architect. We have other network architects. We've got cloud architects. We've got AWS architects working for AWS. We've got VPs over at tech companies that are part of our program, PhD business school professors. You name the kind of architect, from big data architect to cloud architect to network architect to data architect, they're all in our program. And that's why we can easily get you hired. And I'd love to train you. Please join us on Thursday for the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. And we'll tell you everything that we do. Or, you can sign up now, but the point is that's how we'll make you a great architect. And it has nothing to do with your experience, because whether you're Germain, who got hired as an enterprise architect with no experience, or Wallace Agana, who got hired as an enterprise architect with no experience, or Noah Parker, who recently was a social worker who got hired, or Jennifer, who was a mental health tech, or Vladimir, who was a 24-year-old college student who we recently got hired, or Coyote, who was a college student who got hired by AWS, or Jeffrey West, who was a geologist doing some kind of cool geospatial imaging. I don't even know what it was that we got hired at Calian, or Yvonne Tamba that was working as a waiter that we got hired as a cloud architect at AWS, or Balwinder, who was a stay-at-home mom who's working for Microsoft, or Arun, who was kind of technical, but he was working at Home Depot in a non-technical role, managing a department, who we got hired as a solution architect. We get people hired every day, but you've got to have the right skills.
And this is from LGG. You mentioned the importance of communication skills, but as a soft skill, how can we assess whether an architect possesses this ability?
Well, pretty easy. Watch. Yo, Alonzo, do this, do that, do the other thing.
Nah.
Now, that's a person with no communication skills, no sales skills. And I actually say some of them, somebody that does that on LinkedIn trying to recruit people for professional careers. Never had one himself, but he's trying to do that. The manner in which you communicate, the way you talk, the way you walk, it's so clear whether you have good communication skills and soft skills. The way you approach a person, the things that you say are there. So how you present yourself, the way you answer your questions in the interview are going to make it very clear. When you walk in a room and you talk to people, do you look them in an eye? Are you mirroring their body language? Are you reading their body language? Are you saying things in an open and non-judgmental sort of way? Are they agreeing with you? If not, you're doing something wrong. If you ask somebody to do something and they say no, you probably didn't lead them. Your soft skills and leadership skills are not good enough. So you're going to have to demonstrate it every single day. Watch, I'll show you an example of somebody with soft skills doing an architect job, and I'll show you somebody who doesn't. Alonzo, you just became a chief information officer. Watch, now I have no soft skills. Alonzo, give me the number of the amount of data you have in object storage.
No, that's...
Alonzo, tell me about your virtual machines. How many do you have?
It's a little better.
Hey, Alonzo, that networking thing, are you using Cisco gear, Juniper gear, or are you trying to make it up yourself?
Yeah, that's just not
okay. So now I just got fired. I was escorted out of the building by security. Alonzo, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Could you tell me about your business goals, business pain points, and business challenges?
Absolutely. Definitely. We'll love to have a discussion with you, Mike.
So wonderful. Could you tell me what your business is about? Because I really want to help you. In order to truly help you, I need to understand your business.
Our business is focused on healthcare. We want to make sure that our health records and all the patient related information is stored, highly available, and highly durable. Security is definitely a main concern for ours. So we are definitely under the premise of HIPAA related compliance and need to have a solution that reflects that accordingly.
Okay, Alonzo. Okay, I want to make sure I understand this. You're in healthcare, which means that it's a life or death situation, which means your system performance is critical. The security and integrity of your information is critical, and that your systems must work when they work. Is that correct?
Correct, Mike.
Now, Alonzo, could you tell us where the predominance of your revenue comes from? Is it elective procedures or is it emergency department type of care?
Actually, it's elective procedures. We do specialty required procedures focusing on a wide array of requirements. But as depending on what the economy is, we are definitely open to other opportunities, but that is our focus.
Now that makes sense. Elective procedures are typically the highest margin procedures. Where would you say you get the majority of your revenue? Orthopedics, cardiology, for example?
I would say it's orthopedics because we focus on a strong sports market, and that's our focus in both professional as well as AAA related sports teams.
Okay, that's very interesting. Hypothetically speaking, if I was able to connect you to other physical therapy departments, other professional athletic training organizations such as Exos, who is the world's largest training provider of professional athletes, if we could get your people connected to their people in a means where you could actually do remote visits with them and potentially bring them in, do you think that would be helpful to your business?
I think that would be outstanding to be able to increase our market share, exposure, and be able to share our capabilities and competencies with other markets and other groups.
Okay, great. Now I have a lot more questions to ask you, but I've got a lot of contacts in healthcare. I've got a lot of professional strength coaches that I actually work with now that I could probably introduce you. So LGG, this conversation would go on for an hour, but
for the day,
that's where you're, but that's the way you have to use your soft skills and your leadership skills. It's the way that you elicit the information. LGG, I'm going to tell you, I used to practice medicine and I learned a lot of soft skills there. And then Cisco sent me to about $100,000 of soft skills and leadership training after my MBA. So that's why we teach it so heavily. But that's how you demonstrate it. You prove it in your interview. And this would be one of about 50 conversations that we would have to have. Because say Alonzo is the chief information officer. I have to speak to the chief medical officer, the chief medical informatics officer, the chief nursing officer, the CEO. Now I've got to go talk to the orthopedic nurses that are working on the floors. I've got conversations with the unified communications. It'd be one of 50 plus conversations, maybe 500, even 5,000 for an architecture like this.
Also, can one demonstrate this in an interview or establish effective feedback when practicing by oneself?
LGG, you can't practice this yourself because you don't know how you made somebody else feel. So you're literally going to have to do these things, ask people how they felt afterwards.
This is from work. I'm currently pursuing a technical architect role in Magento and want to learn the fundamentals. Would you say learning about cloud computing is critical? Plus, I listen to you guys every day.
Well, I don't know enough about Magento, but I don't know that you can actually be an architect in Magento. Because it's a pretty vague question you're actually asking. And Magento is kind of an Adobe thing, and it's more related to just one web thing. So I'm not really sure to be able to answer you intelligently, and I don't want to misguide you.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one.
Where are some websites where you can practice some projects so we can talk about those projects in the interview?
Oh, wow.
So Kilo.
Hold on. Kilo, let us know what your desired career is. Please let us know in the chat box what your desired career is, Kilo. We're going to switch to the next question and hope that you tell us what your desired career is so that we can answer this specifically and most accurately for you based on the career, because this is a very potentially very dangerous question.
Yes.
So we need to know exactly what your desired career is, Kilo. So let us know. While in the meantime, let's go with this one. How can we gain confidence in ensuring that we have developed the system with the most optimal solution architecture possible?
You know, that's a good question. And I'm going to give you my take on imposter syndrome. So if you're not confident, chances are your subconscious knows you don't know enough. So when I got my first networking job, I spent a fortune on certifications. I had a CCNP, a CCDP, an MCSC, and a bunch of associate certifications. I won't even talk about them because they don't mean a lot. But I had 3 professional certifications. And here's what I did in my first job, Abdullah. I took out a $5,000 new credit card, and this is back in like 1996. And I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to max out this credit card by buying people lunches, dinners, and drinks so that I can build relationships with people before they realize I don't know anything. Now, what I also did, because I knew I didn't know, I read 1,000 pages a day, every single day, for about 6 months strength. And then all of a sudden, I had confidence. But here's the thing, Abdullah. Why are you designing a solution yourself anyway? You shouldn't be. Even if you had 20 years experience, if you designed something yourself, guess what? You still wouldn't know, because you can't know everybody else's job. So I don't ever design anything on my own, ever, not a single time. For every single project I have, I build a team. I find the best security people I know, the best network people I know, the best enterprise people I know, the best security people, the best big data people, and we all work together. And as a network expert myself, they come and ask me for their help, and I'll help them. But a real architecture is a team sport. So you should never do it. And while you're at it, once you finally have something, assuming there's no NDA, ask a peer to see what they think of your design, just like you do for them. I always do a set of sanity checks, and that's when it matters. So Abdullah, I used to practice medicine, and medicine and architecture is really the same job. I know you're going to think it sounds crazy, but here's what a doctor does. Could you tell me what brings you in today? Here's what an architect says. Could you tell me your business goals? Same thing. Problem. Here's what a doctor says next. Could you tell me about what makes your pain better, what makes your pain worse? Architect says, could you tell me about your business? Could you tell me about your tech systems? Again, asking the same number of questions. Now, a doctor makes a diagnosis, and an architect makes a diagnosis, and a doctor builds a plan. I write a prescription, right? The architect builds a plan, calls it the architecture. It's the same thing. Now, Abdullah, if Alonzo came to me and he had a sore throat, I looked in his throat, he told me he wasn't allergic to penicillin, I wrote him a prescription for amoxicillin, 500 milligrams 4 times a day, it would go to the pharmacy. And you know why there's a pharmacist there? The pharmacist would say, yes, that medication is at the right dose and it's not going to kill anybody. The pharmacist is double checking the doctor's work in many ways, shapes, or form. It's a built-in check or balances. Same thing with architectures. We create architectural review boards. We get other people to make sure that they all agree this is the right thing. So you're not going to be doing this yourself. So first, make sure you develop your skills, and 2, make sure you use a team. Because who do you think would design a better architecture? Let's say I took a cardiologist that knew nothing about tech, and I gave him 50 great cloud architects and said, you lead this team. Or somebody that's been in tech for 30 years and thinks they know everything and try to do it themselves. I'll take the doctor leading 50 people that with 20 years experience, which is 1,000 years experience, over that person that thinks they're smart with 30 years experience any day of the week. The quality won't even be in comparison. In Africa, there's a proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Go together. Build your leadership skills, and you'll never be on your own.
Yeah, follow up with what Mike said. The most optimal solution architecture is going to be based off the information that you've gathered from your client. So how do you know that you've developed it? You make sure that you've followed your client's needs. But yeah, just to follow up, you're not doing this all by yourself. You're going to design a solution. Your team's probably going to do a proof of concept, and you'll probably find some opportunities for improvement as that's going along. Like this is not a one-time done, meet with the customer, create a solution, and turn it back around in 2 hours. Like this is a long-term thing. Like same with building architects. Building architects don't design a building in one day or one sitting. You've got draftsmen, you've got lead architects, they have consultants that they consult with various specialties like plumbing and electrical and so on and so forth. And it's a team effort. So just like anything in the world, it's going to take team effort. So Kilo gave us follow-up. Currently, this is our last question. So if anybody's got any more questions, put them in the chat box for us. So Kilo's desired career is to be an AWS solution architect or a cloud engineer, but mainly an AWS solution architect. Where are some websites where you can practice some projects so I can talk about these projects at interviews? So you just opened up another can of worms with your answer. So let's talk about this.
So Kilo, let's first talk about why you don't want to be an AWS solutions architect. You want to be a cloud architect. There's only one company that employs AWS solutions architects, and that's AWS. Everybody else is a cloud architect. So if you only learn AWS and not the cloud, you won't be able to work anywhere other than AWS. And I expect AWS to be doing layoffs for about 6 more months. AWS overhired so many people and they're in the process of laying off. So plenty of other customer companies are hiring cloud architects, and I don't want you to waste your time by trying to pigeonhole yourself to only work for one company. It's not enough. You want to be a cloud architect. Now, here's the thing. Let's say you wanted to hire an airplane pilot, and the airplane pilot had a gardening project on their resume, a fishing project on their resume, a boating project on their resume, and a nursing project on their resume, and they wanted to talk about it in an interview. The reality is you would look at them and say, you've learned everything other than how to be an airplane pilot. Cloud architects don't touch the technology. We design, present, and sell it. And I've got to tell you, Kilo, out of nowhere, I'm starting to see a bunch of resumes with cloud projects on it. And hiring managers are asking me the same thing. They're like, Mike, what's the deal with all these stupid projects on people's resumes? As soon as I see it, I throw them in the trash. And I say, what's going on is there's some people that don't work as architects that are trying to tell people to do projects and put them on their resumes. And then they can't get hired. So Kilo, the first thing is, here's an architecture project, a real one. Building a business case to show the customer that your billion-dollar solution makes sense. Showing a hiring manager that you know how to respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ. That's an architect thing. Designing a solution to make an investment bank more profitable in their algorithmic trading system. That's an architecture. Designing a system to reduce medical errors in a hospital. That's an architecture. Designing a system to make a retail bank more efficient. Designing a system to improve new service offerings and new revenue opportunities for a retail organization. That's a cloud project. So there's two ways you can do it. You could take our training and actually have an internship and do real cloud architect work every single day and put that on your resume under us, and it's under a company. Where you can just try and create some random project section on your resume and shove stuff from somebody else's job. So the key is, if you put engineering projects on your architect resume, you just told me why I can't hire you. And if you talk about your engineering projects on an architect interview, you just told me that I can't hire you too, because you told me that you are a different person than what I'm looking for. Architects don't do projects. Architects do architectures. Now, if you wanted to be a cloud engineer, it's a completely different career. Again, I would find an internship somewhere, because I don't want to see a cloud project section on a resume. If I see it, it's in the trash, just like every other hiring manager I know. But if you were a cloud engineer, you could talk about building web applications. You could talk about setting up transit gateways, for example, throughout an organization. You could talk about setting up the BGP routing to 3 different cloud providers as a cloud engineer. But again, you're not going to find that on a website. You're going to have to know what to design. And then you're going to have to go to the cloud providers, and you're going to have to go build it for real. You're not going to see this on a website. So I would be less concerned about cloud projects because nobody cares. And I would be very concerned about having the right skills and getting the right training. I've interviewed 6,000 people, and I've hired less than 50. It's that bad that if I interview 1,000 AWS certified people, most likely I can't find a single person to hire. I don't care if they did projects or not. I care if they know. How do I know if they know? I'm going to ask them complicated questions. And the way they answer it will tell you whether they know or not. So here's the difference between competency. Here's a certification question. If Alonzo said, what TCP port, asked me, what TCP port does BGP use? And nobody's going to ask you that. I'd say TCP port 179. But Alonzo, ask me the BGP decision process.
Mike, could you explain the BGP decision process, please?
And okay, so Alonzo, here's how BGP makes a routing decision. First, if the next hop is available, it won't be placed in the routing table. Keep that in the back of your mind. Assuming the route's placed in the routing table, the router will prefer the path with the highest weight. It will then prefer the path with the highest local preference. After local preference, it'll take the path with the shortest AS path. After that, it'll look for the lowest multi-exit discriminator. It will look for the origin code where IGP is greater than EGP, which is greater than incomplete. And from that, it'll make its decision. So Kilo, do you see how I just showed Alonzo that I know BGP? That's what you need to do. And a bunch of ridiculous projects aren't going to help you. You need to show competency. See, as an architect, like an AWS solution architect or an Azure solution architect, guess what? I'm going to be selling to clients. I'm going to be presenting myself to clients. Kilo, they're not going to be looking at your projects, but you're going to have to give a presentation as an architect. So the key is, don't go look for projects in somebody else's job. I need you to look for how you can demonstrate that you're the expert. Now, if you did projects under an internship, that would look okay because it would look like work. You wouldn't call them projects, you would call it your job. And these would be skills that you'd be practicing in your job. That's why 100% of all students that Go Cloud Careers enter an internship with us. And they have real architect things to put on their resume. But don't just do cloud projects. You can do them for yourself if you want to be an engineer and you think that's going to help you. But that's not something you're going to be talking about on an interview. The second you put projects there, you basically tell the hiring manager you don't know, and you're trying to learn by doing, which they're not going to be happy with. Prove to them you know by the manner in which you answer those questions.
All right. So our next question, again, this is currently our last one. So if anybody's got any more questions, put them in the chat box. I'm currently studying a Master of Science in Cloud Computing, and I asked the follow-up at the University of Lincoln in the UK. I've been following you for some time, and I want to be a cloud architect. Which of your training programs will be appropriate for me?
Banji, great questions. We have two training programs that would be available to you. Our Elite Architect program and our Cloud Architect Career Development program. The Elite Architect program is our Cloud Architect Career Development program with our Tech Interview Mastery program and our Business Acumen program. And here's the reason why. Our Cloud Architect Career Development program gets people hired every single day as a cloud architect. It's the most effective program in the world of its kind. Now, it's nothing for me to get somebody a $150,000 to $200,000 job out of our Cloud Architect Career Development program. That's nothing. We do it every day. It's simple. But going from that $200,000 job to that $500,000 a year job, that's where that extra finesse and extra executive communication and extra leadership training comes in. And that's why we have the Elite Architect program. And that Elite Architect program is the Cloud Architect program plus those other two programs. And the reason we do this is, look, I was a principal architect in less than 2 years. Here's a principal architect salary over at Google. Note it's $508,000 a year. But here's the key. I want you to see this. The pay range is $394 to $677. That's $300,000. $300,000 different between the top person and the bottom person. On Glassdoor today, the average cloud architect salary is $201,017. And that's kind of the key, so that we're actually looking for, because you have to be a master of what you're actually doing, and that's how we achieve those goals. So the Elite Architect program is not like all of our Cloud Architect Career Development program will get you hired. The Elite Architect program is saying, look, there's $300,000 between the top and bottom paid person. Not only will our Elite Architect program a few years from now help you get that principal architect role, but at the same time, it'll separate the difference between, for example, of, the top, that 300,000. The worst thing that you can do is there's courses that are out there that try to put developer, data engineers, DevOps, and cloud consultants all in the same program. And the problem with that is it's like trying to create a doctor, a physical therapist, a nurse, and a pharmacist all in the same training program. You can't do it, because then you got to teach such generic skills that you're not prepared for any career. That's ultimately what happens in programs like that, is if I try to turn you into everything, you effectively become nothing, because you can only really learn one thing. So finish the master's degree that you're doing. That sounds great. And we'd either be happy to put you in our Cloud Architect Career Development program or our Lead Architect program. Both would truly help you have an incredible career, but the choice is yours. And okay.
All right. So LJG says, you discussed designing IP addressing, a tech-focused topic. A complete answer may need CCDE level knowledge. So how can one in an internship develop this kind of expertise?
LGG, you're right. You do need CCDE level knowledge. Hours. And if you did all the work in our program, it'd be over 700 hours, plus all the additional reading things that we're giving you. So yes, we create CCDE level knowledge, and I've got multiple students that have multiple CCIEs. And they're like, Mike, you're teaching CCDE level work. And I said, yes, that's exactly what's necessary to get people to their goals. That's the difference between the architect that gets hired and the architect that's still wasting their time getting 10 certifications and not knowing anything about anything other than the name of a service and how to configure it. Why do you think we spend 700 hours or more in training? Because that's exactly what you need to have. Exactly. We train everything you need and nothing you don't. So for example, in the CCDE, yes, you do need to learn that IP address planning. We teach it. You also need to know BGP. We teach it. eBGP, IBGP. But guess what? The majority of our students don't need to learn intermediate systems to intermediate systems because they're not designing an internet service providers network. So we cut that stuff out. Our architects don't touch DevOps. It's somebody else's job. So we cut that stuff out. Now we start talking about data center design and multi-cloud design. So we give you everything you need and remove all those other things. So yes, we've got a lot of elements of the CCDE program, a lot of elements of a CCIE data center program, a lot of elements of an MBA program. And we even have PhD professors from MBA programs teaching that program. So what we give you is a perfectly curated, exactly what you need and nothing you don't content. Exactly what we're doing. And of course, we don't take your content away after you're hired. You stay in our program until you're hired, up to a year in the live classes. And even that, you keep the content in the Slack community after that.
So I'm gonna address this one. So can you describe the internship component of the program? Are students working with paying clients? So the way that we have this set up is that all of our work is based off of actual real world scenarios. We are not working on real time current client scenarios. There would be way too much complexity with that and too many nuances with non-disclosures and things of that nature. But all of our experience, all of our projects are based off of real previously implemented solutions. So the internship component of the program is you as a student doing the work as it's presented and taking part in the program as it's presented, so that you have this experience of doing the information gathering, working in teams, working with groups of people to design a solution, and then returning that solution to the stakeholders. All of this, and there's at least 6 individual projects that you're responsible for, as well as periodic live class projects that you're responsible for that go over the course of several weeks. So that's what that internship component looks like. The program itself is the internship.
And when Chris says projects, he's not referring to engineering projects.
No.
He's referring to architecture projects that I've actually been through from some of the world's largest banks, for example, and others. Real world architectures, real world designs. And then they present it to our C-suite level, our C-suite executives, just like they would. Try and sell it back to us just like they would. Respond to these RFIs, RFPs, and RFQs as part of their projects just like they would. Doing the exact work from real life, real world situations.
Yep.
That's exactly what we're doing. So I hope we've answered a lot of questions to help you build your cloud computing career, either as a cloud architect, as a cloud engineer. Today we talked about architect projects versus not projects, the way what to put on your resume. We talked about proving your competency in your cloud computing career. We talked about the cloud architect versus the cloud engineer. We talked about not interviewing for jobs until you're ready for them, because if you do, you'll just convince the company not to hire you, and they'll put a big mark next to you that says don't interview again. So make sure that you're ready for these jobs. We talked about how to build depth of knowledge today. We talked about how to become a real expert today. And we talked about a little bit about branding yourself as well. So I hope you guys had a great lesson today. Please, we've got a How to Become an Architect webinar on Thursday. Please download it. We also have a completely free How to Become a Cloud Architect, and it lists everything you need to know. The link is in the description below of this video. And in the description of this video, we've got a tremendous number of other documents for you to read to help build your career, and they're completely free. So please take advantage of it. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar on Thursday. I'm hoping to see many of you there. Chris or Alonzo, do you have anything to say as we wrap up?
It's always a pleasure. I think we had a lot of great, interesting, and awesome questions. And so if you want to learn more, please pursue us. We love to have discussion with you. Go to gocloudcareers.com, schedule a video conference with our team, and we'll be more than happy to take you to the next steps of enrollment so that we can get you and transition into your best cloud architect career ever.
I don't have anything else to add. I'm just glad to be back. I think it's been a while since I've been on one of these Q&A sessions on Monday. So I was glad to take part in it. Look forward to everybody on the webinar and everybody in class on Thursday and Friday. So have a good day, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Have a good one.